Hey, this is Matthew Harvey with the 12 o'clock siren, recording to you live from the Leonard High School Holiday Tournament. On my left hand is James. Don't forget to mute the mics, Hartley.
I'm surprised, and I'm proud of you. Hey, everybody, I'm back. And to my left is Jason Fuller.
Yep, the one and only.
That's it.
Do y'all call me that?
No, there's probably another one.
Howdy, fellas.
Yeah.
So you might hear a little sound in the background. We are in the cafeteria of the high school, so we've got a little bit of acoustic energy to work with here.
Yeah, and some Frito pie.
Did you have one?
I did already.
Are they good?
And a Coke. They were
Cool.
Did you guys?
like $2. You know, gotta get one.
How good can they be for $2?
How great can they be?
Did you guys hear the Dallas Cowboys website went down?
Nope.
Yeah, they couldn't string 3 W's together.
Ouch.
Yeah,
Ouch.
it's true.
Didn't.
It's true.
Well, who do we got here, Matthew?
It's true. Well, today we have a former athletic director of Leonard High School, the former head coach of Leonard High School, a former coach in the Leonard Holiday Tournament here, Mr. Coach Wrinkle.
Hey, Coach.
Guys.
Good. There he is. Yeah. So
Almost muted you.
Do you come back every year?
Actually, this is my second year that I've been. I came back in the early 2000s.
Okay.
One time.
Yep.
And then this is my second year in a row I've been back.
Gotcha.
What do you think of the new gym?
I love the new gym.
It's cool.
I love
Did
the
you
new
experience it?
gym. No, I did
working here?
not. I
You were gone by then.
actually, Coach David Walker and I helped to design the new gym.
Awesome.
Before I left, of course, it was kind of a surprise even to me that we were leaving when we did. A job just came along that I couldn't turn down, and I wish I had turned it down now. But that's beside the point.
Hey.
But we helped to design the new gym.
So did they keep a lot of your ideas, or
They
all
did.
of them?
They kept. I'm not going to say all of them because I don't remember what all we
Sure.
did.
What's
But,
number 1 and 2 thing that you and Coach Walker were pushing for?
The big thing was we wanted the two-sided gym thing where we could move
Sure.
the bleachers. That was kind of a new idea at the time. There were some schools that had that, but not very many.
Frisco.
Yeah,
Yep.
I
exactly.
remember playing there a lot and being blown away by their high school and gym
Yes.
in general.
Yes, which brings up a kind of a funny thing because when I left in '98, Frisco had one high school,
Right.
and I think they have 7 or 8 now.
Yeah.
It's just
It's
ridiculous.
huge.
20 years later, that's crazy.
Well, have you driven through there lately? It looks like Addison.
I cannot drive through there because I don't know where I'm going.
Yeah.
I mean, yeah, it's nuts.
My sister lives over in Frisco, and I work over in that area. And just in the last few years, it's really there's skyscrapers and stuff now. It's weird. It's an awkward thing. I used to remember when there was brothels out there.
Well,
you
you
know?
think Frisco is foreign. Drive through Salina.
Really?
Salina looks like Frisco did 10 years ago.
Yeah.
It's crazy.
I hadn't been out that direction. I
Yeah.
was surprised coming in through McKinney. Actually, last year when I came through McKinney, and I told my oldest daughter as we were coming through, I said, we would have never gone to Plano had all this been in
Right.
McKinney because,
Yeah.
that was the closest place to go to find,
movies and
anything.
stuff.
Right.
So,
Home Depot.
Home Depot, exactly.
where you live now, Coach?
I live in South Austin.
Oh, okay, cool.
Nice.
Is Pflugerville, is that correct? That you were the principal?
I was the principal there.
Okay.
I was actually was an administrator there for 12 years. The first 3 years an assistant principal, and then the last 9 years I was the head principal.
Cool.
And then the year after I retired, I came back and was an assistant girls basketball coach for another year. Actually, I was one of the crazy things. I don't know of anybody in the state of Texas that did this. My final year at Pflugerville High School as the principal, I also was an assistant basketball coach.
Interesting dynamic there.
6A school, I just, that's common.
Yeah.
At this size school, at Leonard size school.
Yeah.
But it is not common to 6A.
Wow.
And, I mean, you would not believe the comments that I got from other principals that they'd ask me, well, how are you able to do that?
Find time for that?
But I want
You have
to
an 8-day week or something?
No, guys, I learned it through coaching.
Yeah.
It's all about who you have on your team, and I had great administrators, and they would take up the slack. And you're only talking 1 hour a day during the school day that I was not, in my spot. I was down in the gym, and they knew where I was if they needed me.
Yeah.
I was very fortunate. I was never called when I was down there working out with the girls. But it was not as difficult as everybody thinks it was.
Yeah.
Wherever you put your priorities, you can do things.
Yep.
So
Cool.
How long, before coming back and being an assistant coach, how long had you been into coaching before you moved into administration?
25 years.
Jeez,
Wow.
25
Yeah.
years.
Yeah, 25 years.
How long were you here in Leonard?
I was here 5.
5 years.
5
Okay.
of the 25. Yeah.
If I was guessing, I'd say like 95.
Came in 93 to 98.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah.
All right.
So I showed up in junior high in like 95 or something.
Yeah.
I think, yeah. Anyway.
Okay.
Yeah, I used to plug y'all with balls when we would play
Yeah.
dodgeball.
What are two things that stick out to Coach Wrinkle, coaching wise to you guys? Anything in particular? There's two things I can remember.
Turning up the heat in the
coaching wise,
locker room.
just in practice or technique or whatever, or in class.
Well, I was still in junior high when he was coaching, so I didn't get a lot of that.
One thing that sticks out is the cookie jar.
The cookie jar?
You know the cookie jar for free throws?
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. Just stick your hand in the cookie jar. Me and Matt Becknell would
Yep.
say that till like this day.
Yes.
Would probably still
Arite.
joke. Arite was number two.
Arite.
You want to go into that?
Sure. Arite, and that really isn't the way you pronounce it, but that's the way
Sure.
that I made it a southern thing, and I
Sure.
called it Arite. It's actually Arite. It is a German word that means excellence in everything I do. And I heard that at a coaching clinic probably right before I came to Leonard, pretty close to that time, early 90s. And I thought, what a great way to not just talk about athletics, but everything in your
Sure.
life.
Yeah.
You should be excellent in everything. And if if your deal is to settle, then you're not a retail.
Sure.
And
Sure.
so that was a big talking point. From the time I learned that, for the rest of my coaching and as an administrator, I used that a lot.
Well, it's funny because I definitely pegged that to you. I was pulling up to a gas pump the other day, and the girl across from me had a sweatshirt on that said Arite Athletics, and I was like, oh man, wonder where she went to school. Then I realized it's probably
She might have gone to that coaching clinic.
Yeah, that's
She might
it.
have been.
That's it.
How old was she?
Not much older than me.
Okay.
So yeah. So who knows? Maybe she was Pflugerville grad. No. So one thing I remember honestly is Coach Nix and Coach Maxwell and those guys really looking up to you, and as we were playing junior high ball or whatever, and then as we got into high school, or myself, them taking a lot of your offenses and things, and it was the Wrinkle plan, kind of the Wrinkle program, and that's really what I remember. I think Greg Nix is going to be here in a little bit.
Yeah,
actually.
I think so. I think one thing I remember is you guys, you were good on the court, but it seemed to Coach Wrinkleball was all the things you guys did off the court, the way you carried yourself before the games and the way you practiced and all those things, I thought is what made your team stand out. Those are the things I took away.
I'm glad you said that, Jason, because I was big on if we were going to an out-of-town game,
Wear a tie.
everybody wore a tie.
Yep.
And, of course,
It was a business trip.
It was. It was a business trip, and we represented the school.
Better not act a fool.
Amen. I mean, that was that. My dad told me that years ago. He said, he gave me two pieces of advice, and the one that I'll never, I won't forget either one of them, but the one that always sticks in my mind is never do anything to embarrass the family.
Right.
And I said that to the kids several times. You never do anything to embarrass Leonard High School.
Right.
I mean, you represent Leonard High School. It says it on our bus when we pull up. It says it when we step off the bus and we get out on the floor. It's Leonard.
Yep.
So it is about the school.
Yep.
Well, since we're talking about your time in Leonard, we got to talk about the holiday tournament and that game.
Yeah.
This is the 59th, and I'd like to talk a little bit about the holiday tournament in general, how it came about. It's been going on for a long time, and from what I understand, it was set up as kind of an off-season, obviously holiday tournament that you have a week or two with no sports going on.
Correct.
So somebody created a tournament. I don't know who that was, but to take up that time and keep everybody warm as they got back into the I guess spring semester.
Right.
Is that accurate?
And to get you ready, it was the last big thing to happen before you started district play
There
at
you
the
go.
time. Now a lot of the teams are already playing. They've already played one or two district games before they get here. But back in those days, at least when I was in Leonard, we didn't start district till right after the tournament. So it was a good way to get back into shape after being down from eating turkey and everything during the holidays. But my big thing about the Leonard tournament was I was at Princeton. I don't know if y'all know that. Before I came to
I did
Leonard,
not know that.
I was at Princeton for 1 year, and it was not a good experience for me for several reasons. But one of the good things that came out of that was we were in the Leonard tournament. And so we came over to Leonard, and of course, coming from Houston, when I went to Princeton, I'd been in Houston for 10 years. And coming from Houston, I didn't know anything about the Leonard tournament. Well, when I got over here, of course, my big deal was I want to know the history of everything because I'm new to North Texas. And so, I mean, I parked myself in the hospitality room, and coaches that would come in, I'd introduce myself and strike up conversations. And it would always get back to, you know, well, how did you learn about the Leonard tournament? How long have you been coming? Things of that nature. And you could tell when I was at Princeton, it was a big deal to be in the Leonard tournament. Our girls basketball coach at Princeton told me that before we came over here. He said, now, you're in for an eye-opening experience. He says, there's like 30 boys teams and 20 girls teams in this tournament. I said, are you kidding me? I said, how many gyms they have? He said, they had 2. I said, what?
And have you seen the second one?
Yes,
One
exactly.
and a half.
Well, that's another story.
And we actually were unfortunate enough to have to play a game when I was at Princeton. That year I was at Princeton, we had to play a game in the old gym because we lost and had to move over to the old gym. So, and I thought, oh my goodness. But the tournament itself was so well run and well organized with as many teams as it had, I could not get over it, especially coming from Houston, because we had large tournaments when I was in Houston.
Imagine.
But they were spread out over several schools.
Right.
You know, we had, first off, we had 4 gyms in the high school I was in, and our sister school had 4 gyms. So when we had a tournament, we had 8 gyms where we could plan, all the games.
Sure.
We had 2 gyms. There were 2 gyms here. And trying to put that many games on in 4 days is an amazing feat.
Yeah.
That's got to change the dynamic a little bit, though. When you have 5 schools to go to, and spreading that tournament out, it almost feels like not a tournament, sort of. You know, here there's definitely an energy to this is the first tournament I've been back to in probably 15 years, so I don't know. But here you can feel all the people crammed in for all those games back to back. It's got to be a little bit different dynamic there.
Yes.
Right?
And then, as you guys know, because y'all are from Leonard, there are a lot of people that take vacations during this week.
Yep.
So that they can come and they walk in during the first game and they would buy a tournament ticket and they were here all day long.
Yep.
They ate in the concession stand. They were here all day long. They'd bring their families and they would sit together and they would watch. It didn't matter who played.
Yeah.
And there were so many good games. There was a lot.
Oh, yeah.
And I'm sure it's still the same. Not seen a lot here in so many years, but there were just every game was a good game. Didn't matter who was playing.
Yeah, it was interesting matchups all the time. 2
Yes.
teams that you wouldn't likely see play each other.
What are the
different sizes of
what's
schools?
the area that the teams come from? What kind of do they pull from the Texoma region or North Texas, or how was that chosen? You know,
When I was here, obviously a lot of it was from Texoma area. Now the year we got Peaster, they're really not Texoma. We would reach out to other teams. I can't remember how far south we ever got, but we would get teams further away. Because number one, my goal was on the weeks that we could do a 4-day tournament. This isn't one of those weeks. You can only do a 3. But on the weeks that we could do a 4-day tournament, I wanted 32 boys teams and 24 girls teams. Now, there was a reason for that. If y'all bear with me for a second. You have to put everything in groups of 4 and 8.
Right.
So in order for your bracket to work right.
Yep.
So if you have, 31 teams, then somebody's going to draw by. And keep in mind what we talked about earlier, everybody wants all 5 games if they can get
sure,
them
sure.
because they're getting ready for district. So it was a huge deal. And we didn't want to run somebody off because they got a bye.
Right.
As a matter of fact, talking about Salina, one year, I think it was my last year, somebody was playing Salina. Well, they won state championship in football. Mm-hmm. And so the head football coach calls me up, and they were in our tournament, and the head football coach calls me up like 2 days before the tournament, says, Coach, we're not going to be able to send a team over there. And I was hot because I had reached out to them, like in early December, I still had a waiting list. And I'd reached out to them and I said, y'all doing well in football, and there's a chance. I said, if y'all play in the state championship game, are y'all still coming? And they said yes. Well, the football coach overruled them, and so they didn't come. So I had to call the team that they were playing and let them know, because number one, that was going to be a win for that team. If y'all don't, because these guys are coming off the football field, there's no way that they're going to be able to compete. So it's a good warm-up game for somebody,
Right.
and they can get their legs under them, and they can come away with a win.
And it doesn't count against them.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So here they end up with a forfeit. So it looks good on your schedule. You got an extra win, but you didn't get out of it what you wanted to get out of it.
Right.
So and as a matter of fact, either Brad or Greg told me when I was setting up the bracket, you need to put us up against Salina first, And I said, no way, for two reasons. For two reasons, y'all.
Want the game.
I want the game, and there's
Yeah,
a
you don't
chance
want
they
your
might not be here.
home team to get a bye.
Exactly.
That looks bad.
But the other thing is, if they're just going to be coming off the football field,
Right.
they're liable to do something because just because they're used to tackling people.
Yeah.
And I'm not saying they're going to
Just
tackle
play
someone,
rough.
but play rough and hurt one of our guys.
No.
And I don't want somebody to get hurt right before we go into district.
Right.
I said, so no, I even put them on the opposite side of the bracket. That way there was no way we were going to see them during the tournament.
Cool.
So as a coach, playing these games before district, I guess a big part of a coach's problem is really just consistency. You don't like breaks and consistency, right? I mean, I remember, thinking, why do we got to come up here and practice? It's a vacation, but it was just keeping that momentum going, you know, and not letting us do foolish stuff as kids.
Yes.
So
And-
riding dirt bikes or something.
James, I like what you said. Well, riding dirt bikes.
Yeah.
I like riding dirt bikes.
Yep.
My daughter sitting next to me, she's heard this story 1,000 times, I know. When I was in Houston, I had a kid on my team that over the Christmas break, he got on a skateboard and he didn't break his ankle, but he rolled it so bad that he missed the next 4 games.
Jeez.
Well, one of those 4 games that he missed was a game that we had to win, and we didn't because he was our best player. And we didn't win the game. So we ended up not winning district that year. And so when she was old enough to start wanting to be on a skateboard, I said,
Nope.
ain't happening.
It's skateboarding or basketball, and that's it. One or the other. That's funny. Yeah, no. So I remember the part of your program was, or as it was thought of by Greg and Coach Maxwell, were running. We ran a lot. And if we didn't have the talent to beat the other team, we had the cardio for sure, you know. And it comes down to it a lot of times.
One thing I always took away and really appreciate and still use to this day, because free throws are part of our little routine, is the way you broke down the free throw. How simple it is and how you shouldn't be missing them. Right. I mean,
It's called free for a reason.
Yeah, they're
Right.
free.
You
have
would
to
break
get
it down.
those.
You've got 10 seconds to do it. You've got all the time in the world. Really, it's just you and the goal. You're straight on. By the time it releases, it's even closer to the goal than. I mean,
Yes.
the way you broke it down was better than I'm doing right now. But I thought it was really cool. And me and my brother shoot free throws all the time. Like, we have a routine that we do, just trying to get to where you can do consistently. 80% or something like that for me is good.
For
But
anybody, that's good.
But that's what we're hitting probably 80% now, consistently 70, 80, which is pretty cool. And
Yes.
I always just took that away and
Well, my high
just
school
shooting
career,
free throws.
My high school career, we had to run suicides for every free throw we missed in a game. So
That being said, Matt Becknell and I were on spring break in Boston. We went to a Celtics game, and I got chosen to shoot free throws on the half court at halftime, or not half court, but at halftime from free throw line, and blew it. I completely blew it. Completely blew it. It was embarrassing.
But there's probably one reason that you did.
Nerves.
No, I'm not going to say that. It's because there is so much open air.
behind the goal.
Exactly.
Yeah.
When you're playing in a
you're
gym
right.
like Leonard, it's just normal. Your three-dimensional vision is different. When you get on one of those goals where it's just out in the middle of nowhere, your depth perception changes.
I remember because I missed it, and
Yes.
I did layups twice, missed both of them. I mean, it was those, you can see through it, and it's the rafters.
My sophomore year, we made the playoffs. We went over to play UNT at the Super Pit over there, and it's the same thing. I missed. I was probably an 80% free throw shooter, and I bet I made 60% because it was just out. It's like it's hanging in the middle of nothing.
Yeah.
Which
It
leads me to my third thing about what I think you implemented, which was the mismatched color of the bricks on the walls.
Yes.
Go into that. I always thought it was pretty
Some
cool.
of them
It's-
tricks.
Okay, now I'm going
I
to.
don't know who uses this, and you're retired now, so it doesn't matter, right?
It doesn't matter, but maybe there's a young coach out there that
might
might pick something up from this.
Yeah.
And y'all, it's just a theory. I'm just going to tell you it's a theory, but I'm going to open with this. The last game I coached at Leonard in basketball, we got beat by Italy in the second round of the playoffs over in Terrell. And Terrell had a new gym. Number one, I lost the flip. I did not want in that gym because new gyms have tight rims. And we were a good shooting team, and they were not. And I didn't want a tight rim because I wanted our slightly off shots to go in. And I knew that they weren't good enough shooters. It wasn't going to matter. We lost the flip, so here we're playing on these tight rims. But the second thing was on one end of the court, they had a mural of this big old huge tiger, red and white tiger head. And it was sort of like what you're talking about. It was like different colors by bricks right behind the goal that you're shooting at.
Yeah.
And so the first half, we got there early intentionally because I wanted to make sure we shot on that end in the first half, and they were shooting on that end in the second half.
Right.
So that was one of the things. And, of course, it almost worked out for us because we got down – I'll say it. We got down 22 going into the fourth quarter, and we came back and blew a layup towards the end of the game that would have tied up the game. So we'd come back from a 22-point deficit, but they could not make a free throw on that end of the floor. But anyway, to go back to why I did certain things, I'm going to talk about the heat first. Because the one thing I loved about the Leonard gym, number one, it didn't have any air conditioning, as y'all well know. But it did have a heater. And you could turn the heater up to 88. So all of the practices, I made sure the heater was at 88. My reasoning was
Conditioning.
Well, conditioning, but also when our game started in our gym, it was a packed gym.
Yeah. Standing room only most games. Yeah.
Especially during the holiday tournament.
Yes.
Well, it was more than 88 degrees in that gym.
Yeah.
Y'all know that.
Oh,
I
yeah.
mean, even if we turned the heater off, there was so much body heat in that gym that it was sweltering. So it was an advantage for us because we were used to playing in that kind of heat. You're talking about me painting the walls different colors. The reason I did that was as a distraction to the other team. They definitely had to deal with it. But when we're working out in that gym every day, all of a sudden it becomes no distraction at all. It's just that's the way it is.
And just to paint a picture, it's basically like a yellow or blue wall, and then every 10 feet or so would be
or less, yeah.
Or less, maybe.
Yeah.
It wasn't that noticeable. I mean, it's noticeable, I guess, but it was just to throw you off a little bit.
And what it looked like to the average person was just somebody's art way of doing a wall.
Right.
And that wasn't the reason that it was done that way.
I always thought it was pretty
At
cool
all.
that something you just take as design was
intentional.
designed. Yeah.
Well, if y'all remember also, I painted the three-point line into the lane. Do y'all remember that? Mm-hmm. The lane was gold. The three-point line in was blue. Well, there was a reason for that too, because when you're playing, your depth perception makes the goal look closer,
Right.
Because you've got those dark colors. Well, like I say again, our kids are practicing on that floor every day. There is not a depth perception problem for them, like talking about the gym, playing at North Texas.
Sure.
You've got this big open space. You're not used to playing it. Same thing for people coming into our gym. And if y'all may not remember this, the last 2 years I was here, we lost 0 home games.
Right.
0.
Yeah, I was going to touch on that. We talked about the Peaster game, and at the time, I didn't realize how big that game was because I honestly didn't think we could lose here. I didn't think anybody could beat us at home, and the boys or the girls. It just seemed like the Mavericks could have came in here and we would have beat them at home.
Yeah, we were on it at home.
Yeah, we were.
Yeah.
Well, it goes back to a lot of the things that we taught as well. We taught the kids, we're protecting our own home court. And then, of course, I'd turn that around. We'd go somebody else's place. I'd say we're going to beat them on their home court. We're going to embarrass them in front of their fans, So it's all a coaching. It's a head game. So there's a lot of head games.
A lot of the kids now here in this holiday, this is a great holiday tournament, but it doesn't have those big game feels like it did back in those, the Commerce and Peaster games and stuff like that. Did the girls being so good at the time play into that big game atmosphere?
Yes.
I mean, they would have a huge game right before you guys did.
Yes.
Against Gunner or whoever it was, but Coach Walker always had the girls ready. What was that like?
Well, David Walker and I had a very similar.
You had contrasting styles.
We had different styles, but we had similar philosophies. And I don't know if y'all remember this from the 5 years that I was here. We didn't, and I had John Blacker be the first year. He was a senior, so he was a 6'5", 6'6" kid.
Yeah, he
but
could dunk.
He could dunk. But for the most part, we didn't have any size boys-wise.
Right.
But we always had good-sized girls inside. Right. So Coach Walker could play a physical inside game. When I was here, now after I left, they got pretty guard-heavy like we were with the boys. Nope. And, of course, he had a lot of success with that, which tells you good coaches can change with their players.
Sure.
The one thing I love about high school basketball in Texas is this. High school coaches, for the most part, the kids that walk in the school is who they have to work with.
Right.
Yeah.
And they adjust to who they have to work with. They don't have a philosophy like, if you go to Kentucky, they have University of Kentucky, they have their way of playing.
Sure.
He recruits people that play well in that style.
You don't have that luxury in high school.
Heck no.
No.
Well, in most high schools.
Yeah,
Some high schools
Nazareth.
do some of that.
Nazareth, maybe.
I'm not going to say Nazareth, but the ones that I know that, the bigger schools,
Yeah.
they have ways of getting kids that nobody else gets.
Sure. Well, when you were here during that era, what do you remember most about the Peaster game?
Oh, wow.
Talking about adjustments and stuff.
How did that game come about?
Well, of course, we actually had an overtime game the night before against, it wasn't Quinlan, maybe Rains. I can't remember exactly.
I think that's who the girls are playing in the championship
Is it
against
Bristol?
Rains tonight.
Yeah.
I think we had an overtime game against them the night before. And here's another thing. We never lost an overtime game when I was here. Because that was a big point of pride with me. I didn't call it OT. I didn't call it overtime. It was OT, and it was our time.
Yeah.
And so
That's where some of that running comes in, too.
well, true,
know?
true. The kids know. But now before I talk about the Peaster game, I want to go back to that because Justin Griffiths, I went to see him. He lives down in South America.
that's right.
Nope.
And I went to see him
Recently, right?
Yeah, he's been down there quite a
But
while.
you went
I
down recently,
like
right?
was a summer or
3
two
years
ago,
ago.
right? Oh, okay.
It was over spring break. I think it was the last year that I was. No, it was 2 years before that. So it's been 4 years now. Well, it's been a while. It's been 4 years since I've been there.
lot sooner.
I did,
than
too.
that.
Yeah, well, it seemed like it was a lot sooner. But anyway, he made a comment to me. We were talking about, I said, nobody was in better shape than us. And he says, yeah, Coach, because we ran the cycle drill forever. And I said, you're right. He said, Coach, we never ran wind sprints. I said, you're right. Because my philosophy was always, if we're going to be running, we're going to put a basketball in our hand.
Yeah.
And we're going to get basketball conditioning out of them, not just conditioning.
Sure.
So to go back to your point, I don't know what Coach Nix and Coach Maxwell did to y'all if they just put you online and ran wind sprints, but I didn't do that.
No, well,
That wasn't my
they
deal.
misinterpreted your intention then because we ran a lot of horses, man. A lot of horses. I was like, not another one.
Speaking of Maxwell and Nix, they were your two go-to men.
My last
proteges.
Yes, they were. My last 2 years here, they were my assistants. Brad was the JV coach, and Greg was the junior high coach.
Was Spot your offense? Run Spot? Yeah, with the two-man swinging?
I created Spot for my son.
Really?
Yeah. The year that he was a senior.
He was a shooter, right?
He was a shooter. He was a really good shooter. And I have to brag about my son because his junior year, he was not a very good player. For the first half of the year, he was like a lost goose. He didn't get a lot of playing time.
Sure.
And I told him, I said, the only way you're going to get on the floor is if you take a charge. And he and I even talked about this a couple weeks ago when I saw him. He said, I never took a charge. I said, you know better than that because your junior year, you'd have never got off the bench had you not taken a charge. But I would stick him in the game, and he was a little old skinny guy, didn't weigh a lot.
Sounds like me back in then.
Back
not
in
now.
the day. Well, me too. But anyway, he would get in the game, and he'd try to take a charge, and every now and then he'd get a legit charge. But he asked me after the season, he said, well, how am I going to get more playing time next year? And I said, son, the only way to get more playing time, you're going to have to shoot. I said, number one, you can't guard me. You're slow. I said, you can't jump. There's no way that you can
Sounds like
play.
he's describing me.
So anyway, he would go to the gym every day during the summer. I mean, he would get up, he'd grab the keys before it got hot because, again, no air conditioning in the gym.
Oh, yeah.
And I made him chart his shots. I wouldn't let him. He had to come home and show me his chart so that I could see if he was improving or where he needed to shoot more shots from. And we'd talk about it. And then he would go back in the evening when the sun went down, and he could get some coolness in the gym, and he would go again. So his senior year, as a matter of fact, I knew he had turned the corner. We had fall league that year over in Dodge City. And I went over there and watched him play, and I didn't get to go very often because football practice ran so late that I didn't get to go see them play. Well, they happened to be playing like at 8 or 9 o'clock at night on one of those nights, and I went over there, and he scored 30-something points.
Whoa.
And I go, what in the heck has happened to him? So at that point, I thought I had Justin Hensley. I don't know if y'all remember him. He was about a 6'1", and he was my post. That was my tall post. But he could jump. I mean, he could.
Jason Hensley?
Jason Hensley.
Yeah.
That's right.
Yeah.
I was about to
Jason.
say, that
Jason.
sounds familiar.
Jason. Thank you.
Yeah, sorry.
Jason, if you're out there, I apologize.
He is
But,
listening, actually.
Is he?
I don't know. I'd like to think he is.
Well, Jason was my inside guy. And then we had
This is like 96?
97.
It was the 94-95 season.
Okay.
Yes.
Yeah.
And then, of course, I had Lefty. Y'all remember Lefty? Oh, come on now.
I would know.
Coach
when you tell me.
Maxwell's
Brother. Yeah.
What's his name?
Jason Rowland.
Jason Rowland.
Oh, yeah.
I
He
had
was a
Jason.
stud.
That's
Oh,
right,
he
yeah.
was a stud.
Yeah.
I remember
But-
him as a running back more than
Safety.
basketball.
Yes.
Or,
He's a good safety.
right?
Very and good baseball
He's
player.
fast,
Good.
real
He
fast,
was
yeah.
he was fast. Y'all, he ran a 4.28
Yeah.
40 with the college guy there.
Yeah.
4.28.
Wow.
He just wasn't very big.
He just wasn't very big. Well,
Yeah, my size or shorter.
East Texas offered him a scholarship as a punter. And what they were going to, what they tried to entice him with, they said, well, we'll run fake punts with you because
Yeah.
nobody can catch you.
Right.
And he wouldn't go do it, which I wish he would have, just to see.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But he didn't. But he was my point guard. So I had a guy that I didn't have to worry about on the press. Anybody could press us. Jason could get through the press.
Yeah.
I had a shooter outside, and I had I'm going to say big man, even though he wasn't. But he was a very good scorer.
For this area,
around.
he was a big man.
Yes, and he was
athletic
wiry,
for a big guy.
very athletic. He could stand under the goal and jump up and
Yeah.
dunk it. And he was only 6'1". So I designed the offense to where those guys were in the three involved. So Ray basically ran the baseline. Jason would go from one side to the other. He would actually go from one block to the elbow on the other side, then slide down to the block. And then Jason was too many players, y'all, over the years.
Over the years.
Jason was my turn man, so he would be the one that would reverse the ball and get the ball back in Ray's hands.
Right.
So, yes, Spot was designed for them, but it worked so well that year that I ran Spot for the rest of my coaching career.
Right.
I would place different people, and we would adjust depending on who we had. What players I had access to. Like one year I had two really good post players, so we changed it a little bit and made it a kind of a short corner offense, which was, for that team, was great.
Yeah.
It really stretched the inside, but I don't know if you understand what that means, but it was a very good offense. But, yeah, it was designed because I had a good shooter and I had a decent post guy, and I didn't have to worry about a press break.
You know, at 6'5", as a freshman, Coach Nix was trying to make me the number 2 man there, and I just wasn't a number 2 man. You know, bless his heart, he wanted a big guy outside, to shoot. But I went from not starting on JV that year to changing up and going back inside to starting on varsity the next year.
There you go.
I just wasn't a number 2 man. I was a number 4 guy, number 5 guy.
Now,
Well, no, I'm sorry, but
sure, go ahead.
y'all had Kyle Becknell about that time.
Yeah,
Kyle
And
was
he
my
was,
age.
and he
Yes.
was a 6'5" guy
Yeah.
that could shoot
Yeah,
outside.
he could shoot outside.
And
yeah.
so I'm sure Coach Nix was kind of thinking that he was going to mold you in kind of his way.
I was a baby hook guy. That's my
Yeah.
thing.
Yeah.
I mean, I could shoot a few threes, but Kyle was a good shooter. I was.
Yeah,
I was
he
not
was
that
a good
way.
Now,
shooter.
you were talking about offensive stuff, but I remember you guys pressing a lot of teams.
I don't care what anybody says. My claim to fame is still going to be defense for the rest of my life. And
Number 33. That was the
33
yeah.
was our 1-2-2.
I mean, you would press teams from the opening tip.
Yes,
and
we
that
did.
had to throw them off. It had to.
And they knew it was coming.
They had to know it was coming.
And so now I can probably talk a little bit about the Peaster game
Let's get into
Let's
that.
do that.
because I will go to my grave believing that the 33 was the reason we won that game.
Sure. Build up that game for us, though. Tell us about
Okay.
Peaster.
Well, at the time, Peaster was ranked number 2 in the state. I don't remember if they were undefeated, but if they had a loss, it was 1 coming into that game.
Now, they had, I do remember Travis Hull.
Travis Hull
Travis
was their
Hull
stud.
was a, when he says stud, this guy was a stud. I think he
Man
still
amongst
holds
children.
a triple jump record. Is that correct?
Well,
or he did for a long time.
I don't know that, but I will tell you this. The thing about that kid that I remember, he was very you could tell
stocky kid, yeah.
He'd been in the weight room.
yeah.
And so when you fouled him on a shot, it did not adjust his shot.
Yeah.
And
No,
I'll
he
get
was,
to that as we get into the game about when the turning point of the game was.
He looked about average height, but the kid, I watched him in pregame for that Peaster game. He was doing 360s off both feet.
But
The kid was crazy athletic, really good too. And they had a big guy.
They
had a real big.
they
like
had
a
a real big-
6'5", 6'6".
Yep, but their point guard was really good too. His name was Jeremy, but I don't remember what his last name was. But he was a stud too.
And they were
So,
well coached.
very well coached. And the thing that was really good about it was they played the same style of ball we did. So their style didn't bother us. We were going to be able to run with them, as we've talked about several times now, but we were going to be able to run with them throughout the whole game. The deal was going to be who broke first. So coming into that game, they had pretty much walked through our tournament, guys. They had not had a close game. They'd had a couple of first halves where, like the first game, I remember vividly the first game. I don't remember who they played, but I walked out of there thinking at halftime, I thought, man, they're not as good as everybody says they are. And then, of course, either Brad or Greg calls me later on and says, oh, my
they blew 'em out.
goodness, you would not believe what happened in the second half. And, of course, that's typical of this tournament, people getting their legs under them in the first half or in the first game.
Sure.
Then finally coming unglued. But after that, they wore everybody out. So I was kind of concerned. As I said earlier, we had played an overtime game the night before and won that game. So coming into that game, I was tired. I was exhausted. You're talking about the end of 4 days. I don't know how many games how many games had been played. When you talk
and you're
about both
organizing, hosting, getting your own team ready.
Yes. And so I'd gone home and taken a nap, and actually had gone to sleep, which most people. I know when I got back, Coach Maxwell said, man, you look good. I said, I got some sleep. And I don't think I was getting sleep at night because you're worrying about the next day and things like that. But I'd actually been able to relax. And I think the reason I'd been able to relax because I was thinking, we've got nothing to lose this game.
Yeah.
They're number 2 in the state, and we were in the top 20 or something, but we weren't.
Sure.
We weren't their caliber as far as everybody else looking at us. But I knew that we had some things up our sleeve, and I had 2 of the best competitors I've ever coached in my life, in Justin Griffiths and James Titus. Those 2 guys did not like losing. And when you have somebody that doesn't like losing, then you got an advantage.
Right. Yeah, and to add to that, they're a year older than me, and we played youth sports against each other, and those 2 guys played good together.
Yes.
They knew what each other was thinking a lot. They could. It was unspoken.
Yes.
For those that didn't get to watch them play. James and Justin kind of had a ESP type thing.
They did.
Sure.
And plus, I think they were as close as brothers.
Yeah, and competitive against each other.
Very competitive. So to set it up, that's what we went into. The game itself played out the way everybody thought it was going to early. They got a decent lead on us, 8 or 10 points, and they pretty much kept that. We'd chip away a little bit, but then they'd get it back out. And it stayed that way till 3 minutes were left in the game. And the reason I know 3 minutes were left in the game is because I've watched that film I don't know how many times.
Do you own it?
I own it, but I can't find it anymore, I'm sorry to say. Last year, as a matter of fact, Jared Woodruff, I ran into him here, and he says, I've got a copy, Coach. I said, I've got to get a copy, get it on DVD.
Saw him the other day.
So
I may be able to help you out with that.
if you've got, I would love, I'll pay for the DVD.
I think Jeremy Nolan left one at my house
Really?
years ago, and when we moved this year, I found it.
Oh, man.
So I would try to make some copies of that. I want one for myself.
Yeah, me too.
Yeah. And
I'll help you out with that.
The quality, Jason, is not that big a deal to me.
Yeah, that's okay.
Because going from VHS to DVD, it didn't always real good quality, but I would really love to have that game.
Sure.
If you can,
I can hook you up with that.
And I'll pay you for it. I promise you. I'll pay for all the copies you want to make. But anyway, with 3 minutes to go in the game, I will never forget this because when I'm showing the film the next day, or it wasn't the next day, but on Monday, when I'm showing the film, somebody on the team, when 3 minutes were left, these 2 people get up, these elderly people, and everybody knew who they were. I don't remember their names. I didn't know them. But they get up and walk in front of the camera because they're leaving with 3 minutes to go. The score is 98-88.
Right.
We're down 10 with 3 minutes to go in the game. And they get up and leave, and as they're leaving, we're watching the film, somebody says, don't leave.
That's funny.
I will never forget that.
Wow.
So, and what was cool was right next to the camera, and if you get that film out, you'll hear this.
Mm-hmm.
During parts of the game, the radio broadcaster is sitting next to our camera, so you can't hear the whole broadcast. But there are times when he gets excited
And you
that
can hear
you
him.
can hear him.
Yeah.
And so in the last 3 minutes, he gets excited. The turning point of the game was this. I called a timeout with 3 minutes to go. I get them over there, and I said, gentlemen, we're tightening up 33. In other words, we're going to get tighter on them.
Yeah.
Because we've got to force them to go faster because in my mind, I'm thinking, we
start making mistakes.
This is our 5th game, both of us, in 3 days, in 4 days. Everybody's tired. We've got to do something to make them make a mistake.
Right.
The first trip down the floor, Keith Davis takes a charge on Travis Hull. Okay? First off, we went down, scored, made it 98-90. Keith Davis takes a charge on Travis Hull on the other end. We go down and score. So now we've cut it 98-92. The next time down, they get the ball inside the hole. He goes up for a shot, and we foul him. But not only do we foul him, guys, he missed the shot. And I turned and looked at Mad Max, and I said, he's tired.
Yeah.
He had not, every time he had been fouled in the tournament, he had never missed the 2-point shot. Never.
Yeah.
It was always a 3-point play he was going to the free throw line for. He missed it. And so he didn't make the 2 free throws. I know he didn't. The reason I know that is because we end up tying the game at 98 before they score again, and the score that they make were 2 free throws, because in the last 3 minutes of the game, they made 2 free throws, and that was it.
That's it.
Oh, wow.
And it wasn't after that foul. So we end up taking another charge on him, and I think it was Jeremy Nolan that got the second one. I don't think Keith got both of them, but I think Jeremy Nolan got the second one. But we end up taking another charge on him in that 3-minute span. They call timeout when it's tied at 1. We actually went ahead 100-98. Then they made the 2 free throws, and Danny called timeout to, talk to his guys. And everybody comes over. We're tied at 100, and you could see it in everybody's eyes, guys. When we're coming off the floor, we are
excited.
The fire is there.
Oh yeah,
and a little bit of anxiety.
Now, I'm not and Jason, I'm not going to say that you're wrong about the excitement. I'm sure there was excitement, but you could tell that we're ready. It's our game. It's our game. It's sort of the same
Not
look.
run down.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Remember that I told you about the
You played a
overtime
rough
game.
100 game. That's
yes.
not a low score total.
Especially when it's
high school.
when you're 5th game of the
Absolutely.
in 4 days.
Yeah.
But the night before we'd played that overtime game, it was the same look when they came off the floor to start the overtime. It's like, it's ours.
No panic.
I mean, no panic.
Yeah.
It's like,
this is what
we're
we've been
here.
preparing for.
I'm going to use what you said earlier about businesslike. Mm-hmm. The guys were very businesslike. There was not the only person that was really excited was Jeremy Nolan, because on film you can see him when Danny called that timeout. As we're leaving the floor coming to the bench, Jeremy's kind of at the back of the pack, and he jumps up and does this little Clem Cadiddle hopper deal. And so, I didn't see that during the game, but I saw it on film the next day. And anyway, so he was excited. But everybody else was just so focused on what was going on. And then at some point in that I'm going to say it was the last minute of the game, after it got tied at 100, James got scratched inside his mouth. I don't know if anybody knew that or remembers that, but he got scratched. And if y'all remember, the rule was if you're bleeding, you leave the game.
Yeah.
Well, so he comes over to somebody's shooting free throws. It wasn't James. He comes over and he grabbed a towel and he spits in this towel, and I see it, and I said, so I get over there by him like, what's wrong? Now I'm about to panic, y'all.
Yeah.
We need James Titus on the floor. And so he's trying to mash on it and keep it, the blood from coming out. And we actually survived that. At one point, James was shooting free throws in that last part of the game. He's actually shooting free throws, and the referee is standing by me, and he kind of gives me a side look. He says, that bleeding doesn't stop. I got to take him out. I said, there's like 30 seconds left of the game. I said, there's not enough time. Let him stay in the rest of the game. Yeah. Of course, we ended up beating him 109 to 100. And then, of course, the crowd was just so massive. It was crazy.
I was in that crowd, and when that point swing came late in the game, it was electric.
Oh, yes. Yes.
One of the few basketball games, high school-wise, I've seen that there was electricity in there.
So what happened to go on that run, that last little bit, to beat them by almost 10 points right there at the end? Did it just break them?
It seemed like they forgot about Justin Griffiths, who had –
Justin had 48 or 49 points.
Jeez, man.
But keep in mind, now that was throughout the game.
Yeah.
Keep in mind our offense was a lot like theirs. It's get the ball out fast, get it down the floor, and
it's a run-and-gun offense.
It's a run-and-gun offense. Get a layup, get a three. No. And Justin in the last part of the game, Justin was making the layup and getting fouled, so he was making 3-point plays without shooting a three, because we were so good at getting the ball up the floor.
You guys pushed the ball better than a lot of teams I've watched.
Yeah, and that carried over after you left. That was our style of play for years after. That carried over. Leonard was a run and gun offense. Now I don't know. I haven't seen in years, but that stayed with the program for a long time.
Well, I'm glad to hear that.
Yeah. Well, sometimes it's the only way you can win games.
Yeah, it is.
Are you familiar with the coach from Sacramento, owner? I think he's like an Indian owner. tech guy that owns the Kings, or I believe it's the Kings. Anyway, his deal was always press. And he started
Always.
coaching with no basketball knowledge whatsoever, just crunched the numbers on how things work in basketball stat-wise. And his child, little dribbler coach team that he had would always run the press, and they would just annihilate every team. And then he implemented that somehow, I think, to the King, or maybe to the down to the coaching staff of the Kings. I don't know if you've seen it. I think it was on
the thing on ESPN.
I think it was on
Yeah.
HBO's True Sports or something like that. It's a fascinating story, but it's very similar to what you've always taught.
It's kind of like the whole don't punt thing.
Yeah, it's very similar
Yeah.
to that too. Yeah, that guy.
Well, guys, here's how all that came about. When I was in Houston, we had a really, really good team. I was an assistant coach. We had a really good team. We had 7 guys that signed a D1 scholarship off that team. 4 of them were seniors. The other 3 were juniors. So over a period of 2 years, 7 guys signed D1 scholarships. One of them went to University of Kentucky, as a matter of fact, and played 4 years and played well for 4 years. But anyway, when that group graduated, for a 5A school at the time, we did not have a lot of talent coming.
Right.
We were going to have to. We didn't have any size. We had a kid that was like 6'8", but he was a toothpick, and at the 5A level, he wasn't going to score.
I feel his pain.
Yeah, but at this level, it's a little bit different.
It is, for sure.
But anyway, we decided we needed to do something different, and so we started looking at the time Loyola Marymount. Loyola Marymount ran the Marymount offense, and it was a fast break offense. The deal was you had to shoot the ball. If it took you, his rule was if you've got the ball after 7 seconds and haven't taken a shot, something's wrong.
Right.
His other rule was if you get the ball past half court, it means that you're open. Shoot it.
Right.
So we're sitting here. We bought the tape, right? And so we're watching the tape, and we're thinking, well, I don't know about this, because all we had done for 6 or 7 years was walk the ball up the court. We had actually lost a triple overtime game, 38-36.
Wow.
Okay?
So you slowed it down.
Yes. And because that's what the head coach,
Can't imagine
that's
that.
the only way that he knew how to coach.
Sure.
But he'd always been successful. I mean, the guy ended up with over 700 wins as a high school coach, so he obviously knew what he was doing. But trying to convince him that we needed to take these athletes that we were now getting at the school, even though they couldn't play basketball, they weren't skilled basketball players, we had to use their athleticism somehow. So I was a big pressing dude, and so I said, we've got to press. Number one, we got to press. So then we get this Marymount tape, and we're looking at it, and so we decide, okay, we're going to do this. So during the year, the first part of the year, we're out there doing it. But the problem was, like, when the ball goes out of bounds, right? So you're as an offensive team, you have to use a sideline inbound play or below the basket inbound play. And so Gerald would go back, the head coach would go back to doing what we used to do before. Well, when you throw the ball in and there's not any instant go to the goal or shoot a three or whatever, it slows the game back down.
Right.
So it just so happened that Paul Westhead, who had invented the offense, was then the coach of the Denver Nuggets, because this was after Hank Gathers had died and all that. So he was the head coach of the Denver Nuggets. One of the coaches on our
There's
full
Maxwell.
staff,
Mad Max.
Mad Max,
There he is.
one of the coaches on our football staff, still to this day, he is the floor man for the Rockets. He had been that since 1980. He had been the floor man for the Rockets. So he said, "Hey guys, I think I can get y'all some time with Coach Westhead. Are y'all interested?" And we're like,
Yeah.
Heck yeah, we're interested." So he set up. They were coming into town. He sets up a time. The guy was just so nice. He didn't have to do that to 2 high school coaches. Are you kidding me? But we go in to meet the guy. And of course, I've got my pad and everything. And so he basically goes over what he went over on the tape.
Sure.
Well, then Gerald, our head coach, says, "Okay, coach, now when you've got, an inbounds play, how do you get back into the speed of it?" He said, "Well, you just like throw it in an open guy and he shoots it." And Gerald says, "Well, yeah, but like what if," and no joke, guys, he had a briefcase. He gets up, he closes his briefcase and starts walking out of the room. I mean, just completely
I don't have time for this.
Exactly. and so I'm like, what the heck? Well, Gerald says, "Coach," he said, "I didn't mean to offend you." And so he turns around and he says, "Guys, if you want to run this, you have to run it. You have to be committed to it and nothing else." He said, you either do it my way or you do it your way. He says, my way's proven. You can do it your way if you want to. And then he left. We didn't even get to say thank you to the guy. No joke. I mean, this guy went from being a really nice guy to being, not a nice guy.
Yeah.
Wow.
But I looked at Gerald and I said, I guess that's the way it is. We all, seriously, the first 10 games, I know at least the first 10 games, both of us on the bench would sit there holding the bottom of our chairs, wanting to stand up and say, don't do that, because for years we'd both been teaching
so
the
foreign.
memory.
So foreign to you guys?
It was a 180 over what we've been teaching. And so we're just sitting there like, oh, we got to let them go. We got to let them go.
Was there a turning point where you go, okay?
After 10 games,
Yep.
there was a turning point because we played the number 2 team in the state that year at that point in our tournament,
Right.
and we beat the dog out of them. And they had no answer for what we were doing. And, guys, I'm telling you right now, we had athletes, but our skill, we had one shooter. And he was a really good shooter, don't get me wrong.
Sure.
The guy led the Houston area for 2 years in three-point shots. That offense really helped him because he learned to sprint down the floor and get open so he could get a shot off without anybody on him because he's white. And everybody else on our team was black.
Yeah.
But we became masters at taking the ball out of the net when the other team had scored, getting it out of bounds and getting it in and down the floor. I mean, within 3 seconds, we were usually shooting the ball somewhere. It was crazy. So when we beat Hastings at that 10th game in our tournament, beat them bad.
You thought,
It's like, and the kids believed in it.
Yeah.
Because, guys, what we did was we had 10 guys that we played. Now, the shooter, every now and then, we'd leave him in longer, but we'd go, the starters would play 2.5 minutes, then we'd sub 5 guys in for 2 minutes. Then we'd put the starters back in for 2.5 minutes, and whatever's left of the quarter, the other guys would go in.
Line change in hockey or something.
Exactly. That's what we called it. That's exactly what we called it. We said line change, and the 5 guys would stand up, and they would go straight over
your
to
hockey.
It was the nuttiest thing ever. But for the next 2 years, the next 3 years that we ran that offense before I left and went to Princeton, I mean, we led the Houston area every year in points scored. We led the Houston area in three-pointers shot, three-pointers made.
So you never looked back.
Oh, no. So when I went to Princeton, it probably was good that I went to Princeton because I learned that not everybody buys into what you're trying to sell, and they didn't buy into it. They didn't want to work hard.
Right.
I mean, I'll call it what it is. They didn't want to work hard.
Yeah.
And not all of them.
What was your
some of
title
them
there at Princeton?
I was the head basketball coach.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right.
So, and we weren't successful. We won 6 games. It got to the point to where you talk about turning point. It got to the point where I benched the seniors because they were the worst.
Heartless.
It was entitled to play because they're seniors, not because they're working hard. And finally, I said, forget this. I had a freshman point guard and 4 sophomores on the floor. Well, you're not going to win with that. I mean, you're really not going to win with that. But those kids had bought into it.
Right.
So
they
it
just weren't good enough
must
to
have
make
been
it happen.
a breath of fresh air when you came to Leonard because you had a buy-in here.
Yes.
You had your athletes. You had
Yes.
James and Justin and Keith Davis. Those guys were
I
athletic.
mean, you had an athletic
but
team.
you
for
also
sure.
had, and no disrespect, but Jeremy Nolan, Andy Barlow,
Yes.
and those guys were tryhards.
Yes.
And they worked hard for you.
Yes.
And you had a knack for getting that out of people. I remember, quick story, has nothing to do with anything memorable, but you helped out a little bit, I think, when I was in 8th grade on the football team. You helped defensive backs, and I played corner. And you told me to jump a route because they threw to the flats a lot, and I forget who we were playing. I jumped her out and got a pick. Of course, I got knocked into the fence. I couldn't hardly walk after that. The only interception I ever had, but you told me to jump that route. You just had a knack for getting things out of kids. That's one thing I always admired about you. And in class, too. You taught biology, and it was the same way in there.
Yeah.
And
I didn't have a lot of interest in school, but that class was an interesting one.
You told me to cut the brain out of a frog, and I did.
Yeah. And the pig.
I'm not going
I
into
don't think
dog
we.
food.
I don't think
am not going into
we can talk about that. Just give it a bit.
But the buy-in that you got kids to buy in, and Walker did too. And it's cool that you guys both did it around the same time.
Yeah, David Walker was a great man.
We were a basketball
He's
school at those times, and we had a good football team.
Yeah, we had a good
But we
football
were
team.
a basketball school. For
and
those.
we had a really good baseball team, too.
Yeah.
I mean, our athletic program thrived at that time, y'all.
Oh, yeah.
If y'all don't, especially my last 2 years here, the football team, we came in third. Both of when Jason Marshall took over as head coach, we came in third. So only 2 teams went to playoffs at the time. So we didn't advance in football, but the improvement was marked over what it had been the first 3 years I was here. Obviously, Jason coached the baseball team. They won district both years. We won district in basketball those 2 years. I don't remember if David won it both years, but I know he won it 1 year.
We're talking about that late 90s coaching staff. We had Jason Marshall and yourself and Coach Walker and
Coach
Pearson and Nix and those guys.
Coach
now,
Scoggins.
Billy
you
Watkins.
and
Billy
Walker
Watkins.
had a very detailed approach to basketball. And Coach Marshall had the same kind of approach to baseball. I mean, he was out, and it was the little things, the field preparation and things like that, that seemed to turn that around. What was that coaching staff like?
When Jason, and of course I was the AD, and I hired Jason. But I think the one good thing about the interview I had with him, and 4 or 5 people, I interviewed 4 or 5 people for the head coaching job when Coach Kane left. But going in my mind, Jason was the front runner because he'd been on our staff,
And he had a pedigree here.
He was from Leonard. He wanted Leonard to be good.
Yeah.
He wanted not just the baseball program to be good, but he wanted every sport to be good. So he was an all-encompassing guy, and he was local. But the thing that really impressed me about him in the interview was I got to the question about working on Sundays during football season. Now, you guys don't. I know you don't have any knowledge of this stuff, but I'd been in Houston. I'd been in every place I'd been where I had to coach football. Football coaches during football season, they work 7 days a week. So
Absolutely.
they would come up on Saturday mornings. You know, they would watch film
study.
Then they'd bring the kids in. We'd watch film with the kids, and we'd take them to the weight room, then run them. And then we would wash clothes. Once all the clothes were washed, we would go home for the day. This is on Saturdays. We'd go home for the day. But we'd come back after church, after lunch on Sundays. We'd come back, and then we would be there until dark 30, until we had the game plan ready for the next week.
We actually stole Fletch on a Sunday to do an interview with us.
Okay.
So he during football season too, I
Yeah.
believe.
So he told you all this.
No, we just assumed we probably ruined his
He
Sunday.
touched on it.
That was the only time we could get him was Sunday evening.
Yeah,
So.
Yeah.
it's busy time.
Which
Yeah.
makes sense.
Yeah.
Right.
So anyway, I'm asking Jason, I said, so how do you feel about how are we going to work Sundays? If I hire you, how are we going to work Sundays? He said, well, I've put a lot of thought into that. He said, I don't think we have to work Sundays. He said, you're going to be my defensive coordinator. He said, I'm going to be the offensive coordinator. He said, I think what we can do is we run Saturdays the way we've been running them. Everybody goes home after we get everything washed. He said, you take tape home, I take tape home, and then we come up with our game plan, our ball side of the game plan. And then we either meet at your house or my house on Sunday afternoon about 5 o'clock. How's that sound to you? And I said,
That sounds
are
terrific,
you kidding
Coach.
me? I said, you're hired. So, and really, that's what we did, y'all. That's exactly what we did. A couple of times he and I met at the field house. So he and I were working, because I'd go home on Saturday. I'd usually take a nap, and then I'd watch film for a while. Then I'd just do the normal stuff. Then we'd get up and go to church on Sunday, eat lunch. And then if the Cowboys game came on early, I'd watch the Cowboys game. Then I'd watch film. If the Cowboys game came on late and we got back from eating, then I would watch the film. And I would get everything ready. And then we'd meet up at 5 or 6 o'clock, and we'd go over our game plan. Y'all, we came in third place 2 years without working a Sunday.
Yeah.
The
Right.
staff did. The
Efficiency.
staff was off.
Yeah.
Exactly. We weren't worn out at the end of the year.
Right.
And I think that was key.
Sure.
So, yeah, Jason, and I love what you said about the little things. Y'all, we ran, I know the last 2 years that I was here in football, we ran the same drills to start defensive practice every day. We did not, every day we ran the same drills, and they were fundamental tackling drills. And you can say I'm wrong, but I'm not. If you watch TV now, if you watch college football and you watch pro football, they don't tackle.
No.
They stick their arms out there,
Miss
they
tackles.
try to hit you hard, but they don't wrap up. They are not tacklers because they don't practice it.
Right.
And that is a little thing that is a big thing in a football game. If you can't tackle somebody, you got problems.
Yeah.
And you can do whatever you want to on offense. But if you can't tackle people on defense, you're not going to win.
Right.
Yep.
So there's my soapbox thing for
That's
today.
true.
So what do you miss the most now that you're retired?
Lord have mercy. Number one, I cannot watch anything on TV without coaching. Okay, I mean your brain is just wired that way, and so
Well, I do that, and I'm not a coach.
I know. I feel the same
You're
way.
an armchair coach. That's right.
Yeah.
Is that what you're saying?
That's it.
No, I'm not going to say that. I'm not, because here's the thing that I think everybody really needs to understand about coaching. Everybody has their own philosophy, and they think that they know more, and maybe they do know more. but they're not practicing with those kids. Coaches practice with the kids. They know what, through workouts, through scrimmages, through games,
Sure.
they know what those kids are capable of doing in certain situations. And yes, early in the year, a lot of times, especially in basketball, because you get to play 30 games.
Yeah.
But in basketball, coaches try out different groups of people.
Different
because
schemes.
Because certain kids play better together. You're talking about James and Justin.
Right.
Certain kids play well together, and they don't play as well with others.
Yep.
Sure.
So coaches have to figure that out.
Yeah.
And so when fans are in the stands and they're saying, yeah, blah, blah, it's like, I don't sit next to fans. So if you want to talk about the way I feel about not coaching now, I don't sit next to fans. I sit in a different spot because I'm afraid, number one, I'm going to say something.
Yeah.
But I don't want to hear that. I didn't hear that. Y'all, I love what you said earlier about when the game was over or the turning point of the game, how electric the gym got.
Right.
I might have felt that, but my focus was on the game and the kids.
Right.
Sure. Well, that's for us.
I didn't.
Yeah.
Exactly.
That was for us.
I didn't hear. I never heard a fan.
Yeah,
I never
you
heard
could
a fan.
tell you guys were.
Locked in.
Well, it wasn't a surprise that they were in a position to win the game, and
I know you heard Ronnie Becknell once or
I
twice.
never heard.
Yeah.
I'm telling you,
yeah, Big Bob.
during a game, y'all, I swear to God, I have never heard fans. That's not my deal. As a matter of fact, I remember my wife at the time. She comes over. We were playing. I can't remember the team, but it was after we'd won district, and so we went over to Waxahachie for a game, and so we're playing this team, and there was some fan up in the stands.
Was it a playoff warm-up? Like
It was yes, it was.
Was
a
it
tune-up
against
game.
Buffalo, Texas?
It was Buffalo.
Whoa,
That was-
whoa, it was James's kin.
I was conflicted that game because that's where I'm from originally.
And they beat us.
Yeah, they did
They
that
beat us.
year. Shouldn't have though.
Well,
Shouldn't
they
have.
had big guys.
They did.
We didn't have big
And
guys.
I mean, they had ballers. They were good, but they shouldn't. They shouldn't have beat you.
Yeah,
that game.
they had better inside guys, and they eventually they worked it to where they had the inside guys making the plays.
My uncle's like the longtime principal AD out there
Okay.
after 30 years. So I was there, and I wanted to beat Buffalo, but all my friends, I kind of wanted Buffalo to win. So, I was very conflicted. It's like having multiple fantasy leagues, So, anyway, sorry. Go ahead. Your wife was telling
Well,
me.
the fans were saying things about me in the stands, and she just happened to be sitting
Probably
up
was
there.
Buffalo then, yeah.
And of course, no, our fans,
Oh.
our
Oh.
fans. And so she got up and said something to him, and I don't know what she said, but she said something to him, and all of a sudden she's sitting over there behind us. And, we're at a timeout, and I just kind of look up there, and Kendall was there, and Lindsay were, she had both girls with her, and she's sitting there, and I'm thinking, uh-oh, somebody must have said something about me over there. But I don't hear that stuff.
Didn't hear it.
My focus was on what can we do to win the game. What can we do to get better in this situation? Who do I need to get into the game? What do we need adjustment do we need to make? My thoughts were never on that. And I love it because my oldest daughter thinks that I am a referee killer during a basketball game. Y'all, I am not.
Yeah, I don't remember you as being that.
Well, but here's one thing that I
She's
do.
laughing.
Here's one thing that I do with the referees. I refereed for 15 years. I don't know if y'all know that, but I refereed for 15 years. I understand where they're supposed to be.
Right.
Okay?
Right.
So when the ball's moving up the floor, that if they're in pairs or if they're in threes, there are certain ways that they're supposed to move, and then they have certain areas they're supposed to be looking at. So when a referee makes a call out of position, I call him on it.
Yeah.
how could you possibly make that
I mean,
call?
exactly.
Yeah.
You're not in position to make that. He's looking straight at it. He's got a much better angle.
All
So
you
I'm
have to
gonna
say is
something.
you know better.
Yeah.
Well, I'd say you're not
Go
in
on
position.
about your business.
disappointed.
Yeah, I'm disappointed.
Give him the thumbs down.
But I wanted them to know that because they need to know that this game is important. And I told one referee off one night after the game, not here, but I told him off. I said, you are the reason that kids don't respect referees because you don't know the rules. I said,
Yeah.
my kids know the rules because we teach rules to them in practice situations. They know what's going to happen.
Yeah, and if you're at a position, you're not giving those kids a fair shake.
No, and
Or
that's
if you don't know the rules.
Oh, yeah.
Oh, that just drove
Because you can
me
be a
nuts.
coach that plays the rules, and if
Yeah.
you're playing a rule that the referee's not, prepared to be,
then you're behind the curve.
Yep.
Yes.
Yep.
Well, and that
then
we,
you're not. Yeah, you shouldn't be there.
we talked about it on a podcast a week or two ago, and so a lot of times refs it's a bad position to be in.
Yes.
Right? They get a lot of hate, but there is nothing worse than a sorry ref.
Yes.
You know, I hated that.
They're getting paid. There's no excuse.
There's
Yes.
no excuse. And there was some times that we played up here that we, Fabio or whatever,
Fabio,
and
wow.
they either seemed like they had something against Leonard or they were just sorry. And I'll just, what's the point of even playing? If we're just going to have to play the refs too.
One thing I remember while we're talking about you and we're talking about Coach Walker, and I may be misremembering, but you guys didn't seem to dwell on referees.
No.
You were going to do what you guys did, and that was it. And that was one thing I think that linked you and Coach Walker is no matter who you were playing, you were going to be yourselves. And your guys did that.
Yep.
And Coach Walker's girls did that. And I always found that to be an interesting quality that your teams took on.
Well, Jason, I like that. I'm glad you're bringing that stuff up, too, because my deal was always one of the things that we worked on in practice was if a referee makes a call and you have the ball, you walk over and hand it to him. You don't throw it to him. You don't leave it on the floor.
Right.
You walk over and you hand it to him. That was a big deal with me because we're showing respect.
Yeah, if you give a little respect, sometimes you get it back.
You can tell a lot about an NFL player what he does with the ball when he goes down. I mean, and I'm not knee deep into football or anything, but I've always noticed that even as a kid.
You got some guys that hand the
some
ball
will
to
throw
the
it,
ref.
some will hand it, some will, yeah, I know what you're saying.
Yep. That's important.
Sure.
There's your little thing again.
The way you
That's
carry
important.
yourself, the way you represent yourself.
So that was a big deal with me, and Walker did the same thing because he picked up on that with me, and he said, you guys always. I said, and I told him why, and I said, think about the Leonard tournament. We treated referees as good as a coach at the Leonard tournament in the hospitality room.
Yeah.
Okay, y'all. When you get to the 5th game and you're playing Peaster, and you need a charge call or a block call, I'm serious.
Yeah.
And I'm not saying that Keith Davis or Jeremy Nolan's charges weren't charges. They were. But that is still a referee's call to make.
Yeah, it's a judgment call.
Put your
It is a
thumb on the
judgment.
proverbial scale.
And I'm telling you, when
yeah.
you've been eating that good food and the coaches aren't cussing and screaming and hollering at you like some coaches do, that comes into play.
Right.
It's human nature. And my deal was with the kids, I didn't tell them that part of it. That wasn't my, that was between Coach Walker and I. My deal was to tell the kids, we're going to respect the referee. Referees are going to, I said, who in here is going to make every shot in the game? Who's not going to make a turnover? Whose man is never going to score on them? I said, that's not going to happen. The referees are going to mess up, but we're going to respect that they are there to try and make the game fair.
Sure. Yeah. That's another thing I see in coaching. A lot of times I see the kids are going to either do their job that they've been practicing to do, or they're not going to do it successfully. But the coach, a lot of times, there's a lot of other things the kids don't need to worry about that they don't, and the coach doesn't seem to always pick up on those little things that are his responsibility, almost as if they don't even know. But you guys, I don't know if it was experience or what, or who had taught you, but you taking care of the ref, just those little things to prepare that the kids didn't need to worry about.
Right.
But it was still helping to put you guys in a position to be your best and to win those games. Those, like I said, I'm glad we got you on. I wish we could have got Coach Walker on before we lost him.
Yes,
but
me too.
The detail. Basketball was every day. It was all the time. It wasn't just when you guys were on the court. That's
Speaking of which, I remember, and I'm sure you really remember when James Titus broke his hand or wrist arm.
Yes.
And he'd be in the gym every day after lunch.
Yeah,
shooting one-handed shots, and I still do that to this day.
Yeah, I remember that.
Me and my brother have a routine that we work out to, and our last thing we do is we have to make 3 in a row, 3-pointers, to get out of the gym. Like, we don't leave the gym unless we make that 3.
How many did you shoot last week?
202. But sometimes, like, my brother will go 1, 2, 3, and then I have to match him 1, 2, 3, and then we go shoot it out at the top of the key. And if I'm getting to 202 shots, I'll take my right hand. I'm a lefty. And I'll just shoot with my left hand. I've always done that to kind of reacclimate my shooting. It just makes it, for whatever reason, it clears my head or makes me shoot cleaner. But I can shoot one-handed a couple shots, and I'll go 1, 2, 3.
That kind of
it's the weirdest thing. I remember watching him, and he had the prettiest shot.
He did
with one hand.
That kind of plays into my point, though, because James Titus was very athletic. He could have just relied on that, but he didn't. James, he worked at it.
Okay, I was trying to get my brother to shoot with one hand the other day, and he couldn't do it.
So that goes back into you
somehow,
getting the most out of a lot of players.
Okay, guys, I've got to tell you all the story, though.
Okay.
About James Titus and that broken arm.
Yeah.
So he breaks his arm, And obviously, it was his left arm.
During season or off
During
season?
the season. We had
Okay.
4 games to go. It was his sophomore year. We had 4 games to go, and we had to win 3 of the last 4 to get in the playoffs. And we won 2 of the last 4. So we didn't make the playoffs that year. But anyway, when the doctor cleared him to come and shoot, like you're talking about, I told him, I said, your shot sucks. And it did, y'all. He was a scorer, but he had a sideways angle of shooting, and so he had side spin on his shot.
Here's the time to fix it.
Exactly.
Yep.
And so what I did was we would go in the gym, and I would show him, you got to get your elbow under it. I said, if you do it like this, you can't hold the ball. It falls out.
Right.
So by doing all that, all of a sudden, not all of a sudden, but over a period of time, his shot gets better. Well, we went to TABC camp that summer, I worked it every summer, but he came to camp. We were doing a game called Cutthroat.
Yeah.
And so and the deal is this: when you're on one team, if you win, you have to switch color of your jersey and go over to the other side. So James, his team held on defense, so they're about to go on offense. So he is flipping his jersey. Well, as he's flipping his jersey, it gets caught, as sometimes happens, it gets caught around his neck. And so they throw him the ball. Well, the only hand he could catch with was his right hand. Well, he caught it with his right hand, shot it, and made a perfect shot. Well, this coach was standing next to me, and he said, is that kid yours? I said, yeah. He said, that's the dangest thing I've ever seen in my life. I said, he's been doing it all spring. Because he had been shooting one-handed shots all spring. Well, his junior and senior year, oh, my goodness.
Yeah, his
This
shot
sucker-
got pretty, and his range got longer.
Oh, yes.
He could shoot from almost mid-court with form, and it was
Man,
pretty.
Jason, you are telling me something about you I didn't know. If you can,
I watched all the time. I loved you guys.
for you to pick something like that out, though, that's pretty impressive because that's a coaching
His mechanics
thing.
got better.
His
and
mechanics were much
Yeah,
better.
his range got deeper. I remember him, Amanda Malone, too. She would do the same. Her shot got better and better and better, and her range got longer. She would shoot
He'd
from
shoot
almost
one-handed
mid-court.
with a squishy ball, and with the other hand, like either flexing the muscle or something. I remember
Yeah.
he had one of those little hand.
You know what I
balls
remember
he'd
most about
squeeze.
James Titus is that other teams had to know it was coming, and he would do it anyway.
Yeah.
Yeah.
He would just do it anyway.
He was an athlete, man.
He
Well-
imposed his will on other teams, in basketball especially.
I'm going to take credit for part of James, though, okay? And that's this right here. I figured out on the other team who was their worst shooter, and I put James on that person. And the reason was, if he left that guy, didn't matter.
Didn't matter. Yeah.
So that gave James time to roam and make steals.
sure.
Yeah.
So, or deflections. So that was a big deal. That was a lot of his success his junior and senior year was getting steals for us. I mean, he didn't have to make the shot on the other end.
Right.
But you get the steal, you start a break, we're scoring an easy bucket, and now they're having to go back through our press again.
Right.
That was huge.
Now,
That was huge.
33 was a big part of your game, but y'all were mostly a man-to-man.
We were
right?
man-to-man.
Yeah.
Once we got to half court, we were man-to-man.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, that's a cardio thing again too, right?
Yeah.
You got to be more athletic to play man-to-man.
Well-
Zones is the easy way out sometimes. Not saying they don't have their place, but you got to.
So at the
Gotta
end
be
of your
on it.
Leonard career, you were probably riding a high basketball-wise anyway.
Oh, yeah. There were
For your
things,
career here.
Matt, I really like that because when I left here, I mean, I really thought that it didn't matter where I went after that. I had solidified my philosophy on
Sure.
what worked and what didn't, regardless of what kids I had. I mean, I felt like I can adjust enough to figure out to use their
Their
strengths.
individual strengths,
and
right?
and we really did it. But to your point, I lost where I was going. What would you say right before?
Being athletic on a man-to-man defense.
Oh, yes.
Yeah.
The reason I like man-to-man is because there's no excuses.
Right. No
And
excuses.
I don't know if y'all remember, but
Accountability.
used to in the locker room, when you left the locker room, there was a deal
Had to
above
touch it.
that says no excuses, and the kids had to touch it going out, and that was an offshoot of man-to-man defense. If I'm guarding Jason, and Jason scores, whose fault is it?
Yours.
It's mine.
Yeah.
It's not because I'm in a zone and
It
he
didn't
wasn't
collapse.
in my area.
Yeah.
Yeah.
No, that leads to excuses in my opinion.
Right.
So my deal was we're playing man-to-man. That way, if that guy gets a rebound, I should have boxed him out.
Yeah.
Right.
If that guy goes baseline on somebody,
Yeah, it's
it was
simple.
my
It's
deal.
black and white.
You
Go beat
betcha.
your man.
You betcha.
Go
Yeah.
beat your man.
Communal defense or one-on-one, right?
Yes.
It's,
Well,
you
we-
can extrapolate that out into society, couldn't you?
Yes, and we were very communal is a good word too because we were very communal on the off the ball defense. I mean, we weren't like just sticking on. I call it YMCA defense, where you just guard your guy and nobody else
Right.
don't help. I mean, we were a very good help defense team, but the deal was the onus is on you to guard your man and box
absolutely.
your man out.
Yeah.
So yeah,
What was it like having James and Justin. You had Keith. You had Brandon Woods.
Yeah.
Jared
Woodruff.
Yeah, Jared. What was it like having all those guys? Obviously, we remember James and how athletic he was, but a lot of people don't talk about Justin.
Yeah.
Justin was one of the most competitive guys I've ever seen in sports, and probably one of the most competitive to ever come through Leonard. What was it like having somebody like that, who if James had an off night shooting, James shot the ball well, but he could get on hot streaks also. When he wasn't, Justin might get all those high percentage shots. What was that like?
Justin he wasn't a three-point shooter. Now, he did make threes.
And he knew that about himself,
I think. But he was very good at drawing defense to him and going by him.
Mm-hmm.
And like you said, he was a scorer.
Yeah.
He could score. He was a very good scorer no matter where he was on the floor. But to get back to the competitiveness, either one of those guys I would have taken, and we could have won a lot of games. But when you have both of those guys on the team,
got to make your job easier.
Oh yeah, because those guys. Well, James Titus, we're playing that last year. We played a tune-up game against Queen City, way over in East Texas somewhere. And at halftime, they were an all-black team. Mm-hmm. And we were down at halftime. And so the kids go in, and I was talking to the assistants and trying to talk about the adjustments we were going to make at halftime. Well, I go in. James is standing on a chair, and he's screaming at everybody, "They're the same color I am. They're no different than you are." I mean, and when he got finished,
he was getting in people's face.
Yes, he was. And when he got finished, I said, "All right, everybody up, let's go." We didn't make an adjustment. We really didn't need to make an adjustment.
Right.
We just needed to play harder. Is what we needed to do.
Sure.
James got it done for me.
Yeah.
So that's what, and we beat the dog out of him in the second half.
That's the second story we've had about a team member standing on a chair yelling at the team.
Yeah.
Coach Lipsy from Celeste told a similar story about his football team.
Now, you've coached at bigger schools. We're predominantly small school here. Tell us how those players might have translated to a bigger school. Would you have had some success with a James at a larger school?
Oh, yeah.
Yeah?
Yeah, James and Justin could have played at any level at the time because they're competitive.
Sure.
Yeah.
And somebody like James, especially because he was so athletic, he would have adjusted. And as I understand it, he went off to a small college in Kansas, but he was very successful up there. So he was playing against a higher level group of kids.
And he always had those strength training shoes.
Yeah.
Jump soles.
Yeah.
You know what? $170 shoes from East Bay at the time that made you jump higher.
The thing I remember most about James Titus is that guy walked with a swagger all the time. And he didn't leave it on the sidelines when he was playing basketball or football or anything. He had a confidence about him all the time.
Yeah, he did.
Justin, too, but not as in your face as James.
Yeah.
Well, he would tell you he's about to shoot it on you, and he would.
Yeah.
James, you're talking about the different levels of school. Mm-hmm. I'm one of the few coaches probably left in Texas that coached Class B.
Oh, wow.
All right, there was Class B in 1979. That was the last year of Class B. But I coached at a Class B school all the way up through a 6A school. I coached every level.
Jeez.
Wow.
I've coached at every level school, every division school.
Do they all have their challenges?
Yes, they do.
They probably have some. I mean, coaching's coaching wherever you go, right? But there's got to be some unique challenges at Allen versus Leonard,
yes.
Right? I mean, probably just the level of ability, really, in a lot of it.
Well, when you start getting to the bigger schools, you have more specialized kids that only play one sport.
Yeah.
So that makes it easier from a coaching standpoint to situate kids to put them in certain positions and whatnot.
That makes sense, yeah.
But it also brings in things that you don't have, at Leonard.
Right.
When
Entitlement.
They've invested a lot of money in that specialized
yes, they
skill.
have, and so their
parents
parents
involved.
Yes.
Yep.
Politics and
and
things
also,
like that.
I don't think they're as well developed athletically. Now, they may be very good at whatever sport it is that they're specialized in.
A little too specialized, maybe?
I think so, because they don't develop other muscle groups because they're not having to do other muscle groups.
Right. So. There is something to be said about a small town where you play both ways on defense, then go in to play, basketball the next year, or the next season. There's something to be said about that. But I always thought it would, I had a conversation with my dad. I said, it's probably good. Like I was a good ball player, but had I gone to, Plano East, I don't know, would I have even played? Maybe not.
I think to your point previously, what you were saying, I think some trust comes with that. If you have covered kickoffs with this guy up until the playoffs in football, then you get in an overtime game in basketball a month later, you trust that guy.
Yeah.
No,
absolutely.
There has to be something to be said about that.
Well, and not even if you played for me or not. When you've been in a pressure situation in any sport, and you translate that, you do translate that in the next sport.
Sure.
When you get in a pressure situation, you've already been
Right.
there. It may not be the same
The
situation,
moment's
but
not
still
too big
pressure.
for you, and
Exactly.
you understand.
But
the
I think
moment.
what Jason was saying, to clarify that a little bit, is going to war with your teammate in football for 6 or 8 weeks, and then moving into basketball, and you're just putting on a different uniform, but you're still we're still playing together. There's a little bit of a trust factor there that
you get that in a small school. You may not get that in a big
Yeah.
school. Maybe you've seen the guy in summer league or something, but
yeah, we don't
maybe,
play.
what if you play the same position and you don't like that guy because your parents told you not to?
Yeah.
I think there's something to be said about small school sports.
Oh yeah, man, I
I'm
love
sure
it.
it's a different animal. What was your favorite? What level?
Leonard, Texas.
Yeah, you don't have to say that because you're here.
Yeah.
He's got the admin right behind
She's
him
shaking
looking
her
at
head.
him. So.
She agrees.
Uh-oh.
Where am
Well,
I going to
good.
be buried?
Really?
Really?
I'm
Wow.
going to be buried in Leonard.
Wow.
Y'all, this was by far.
Not just a passing through? Cool.
So what are you
This-
doing down there then?
Well, it's a good life.
Yeah.
Okay, it's a good life in Austin. I love Austin. It's
Are you taking in some live music and all the food?
I am
and all
By
that?
the looks of your shirt, you might be into the guitar scene.
I've actually
Coach is a rocker.
Yeah.
I've actually started playing guitar 4 or 5 years ago.
Cool.
Nice.
And so, I mean, it was one of those deals where I either do it or forget about it. I've wanted
Sure.
to play guitar all my life,
Right.
but I just never had the time.
And now you're
Never took the
retired.
time. Now I'm
Yeah.
retired.
Yeah.
So
How's
yeah.
it coming?
Oh, it's fine. I mean, I do what I want to do. I can play songs, so I
Right.
figure out songs that I want to play, and I play them on acoustic. I'm an
Yeah.
acoustic guy.
You're not out like studying theory or whatever.
No,
'cause,
I'm not. No.
Yeah.
So if I
that's not
remember
my deal.
correctly, you're a big ZZ Top guy. Is that correct?
Anybody from the '70s that was a rocker,
Yeah.
I'm a big fan. I've seen ZZ 4 or 5 times, I guess.
Cool.
Live.
Nice.
Yeah, Coach is a rocker. I remember that about him.
I'm a big time rocker.
So
What's
where
the
is-
last song you learned to pick?
Somewhere with You, Jake Owen.
Okay.
Okay.
Isn't it? No, that's I'm sorry. That's Kenny Chesney, right?
Somewhere with You is Kenny
It was
Chesney.
Jake-
I know
it was
the
Jake
song
Owen?
you're talking about. Somewhere, yeah.
Okay.
It's Kenny Chesney. I
No,
believe.
I'm sorry. Alone with You, Jake Owen.
That's
Alone
yeah.
with You. That was. I'm sorry.
I think you're correct. You're
So
fine.
That was the last one I did.
where in South Austin? Like South First Streets?
Do you know where Oak Hill is?
Yeah, no.
We
there,
live
yeah.
pretty close to Oak Hill. We're not in Oak Hill, but we live pretty close to Oak
Gotcha.
Hill.
My wife is from Round Rock, so I spend a
Okay.
lot of time in Austin.
Okay.
But I love Austin too. It is kind of weird though.
It is.
Getting weirder.
I like
And
the
liberal.
It's beautiful there.
It's very
the
liberal.
music is cool. The food
Yeah.
is cool. I just don't like all the weirdos.
We call it Little San Fran around
Yeah.
here.
Fist bump there.
Yeah.
Off the air fist bump.
Yeah.
So from I may be mistaken, but you're doing some maybe traveling camping. Is that?
Well, that's a yearly thing.
Okay.
It started, I don't know, 12 years ago now? Yeah, something like that. What started it, guys, was I saw the Grand Tetons with my dad back in 2007.
Tetons. I love the Tetons.
And I told him, I mean, he was, I don't remember how old he was then, so he must have been 61 because I was 50. And I told him, I said, one of these days I'm climbing the Grand Tetons. Well, 2 years later, I climbed Grand Teton.
Nice.
It was the hardest thing I've ever done in my life, physically and mentally.
So was it like I was there a couple years ago and I went from Jenny Lake to Lake Solitude. Was it a trail or were you out there like,
No, it wasn't.
you were out there getting it?
3 days of climbing school.
Yeah.
Oh, wow.
You rope up, you learn to rappel,
Very
you learn
nice.
to use an ice axe. And on July
Wow.
13th, we summited.
Nice.
We'd been up there 15 minutes, and it was like we had to get off because a blizzard blew in on July 13th on
Nice.
top of that mountain.
yeah.
Tetons is that Idaho?
Wyoming.
It's in
Wyoming,
Wyoming,
okay.
yeah.
Yep.
It's right.
Jackson Hole.
It borders
That's right.
Yellowstone.
Gotcha.
Yeah.
Cool.
So anyway, the guys that I went with that year, 2 of the guys that I went with that year, pretty much, well, one of the guys, he and I have, for 12 years, we've gone camping every year since then. And we usually camp in Colorado. And we go try to do at least one 14er, which is a 14,000-foot peak. But weather sometimes doesn't allow us to do that.
53 of them in Colorado, I think. 52.
There's something like
I'll
that.
be at 4 of them 2 weeks from now.
Yeah,
Really?
Yeah.
Me too.
Where?
Breckenridge.
Breck, yeah. Well, see, not far from Breck's where we normally go. It's a place called Buena Vista.
Okay.
It's just south west of Breck.
Okay.
But you get on the road going south, you'll go pretty close to it, and then you make a little cutoff and you get over there. But we stay in a KOA, so I'm going to say we're glampers more than campers, but we do pitch tents.
Oh, okay.
Cool.
And then we don't cook our
Summertime
food.
then, obviously?
It's summertime.
Yeah.
But still
Springtime,
it gets chilly
yeah.
at night.
Yeah.
Especially at altitude.
Yes. But it's great. It's fresh air. You get to see nature, and we just have a good time. And then one night a week we'll go out to there's a bar there in town where they play live music, and it's an open mic night.
Yeah.
And so, different people get up there and sing, but they have their regulars. They're like the last 6 guys that play are really good. I mean, they're pros. And we'll stand there all night long till they're done.
Sure.
And just have a good time. And it's a man trip, although we have now allowed. She's been to 3 of them.
Cool.
And she's got 2 or 3 14ers, right?
Nice.
So
I don't
she-
think I have a 14er yet. I would
cool.
like to remedy that.
I've only taken a ski lift up.
Yeah. I mean, I've done that. Yeah.
I have no plans to
Have you,
summit via my feet.
Have you been out to Moab?
No, I have not.
Moab's awesome.
Yeah, that's what my brother's been there and told me that.
So Colorado has my heart. I go to Colorado all the time. But we went out to Moab a couple years ago, me and some guys in my military unit, and we did the biggest rappel they had was 180 feet free,
wow.
just free rappel.
Yeah.
Let me tell you, I rappel all the time, and it gets the old heart pumping when you're just 180 feet in the air. It's good though. It's good. Moab's magical. Love it.
Well,
So,
coming off the Grand Teton, and remember there's a blizzard blowing at the time. We had to rappel 150 feet down, and we rappelled down onto a 6-inch ledge. So we're facing the
ledge.
The wall.
Yep. And our heels are basically hanging off, and everybody has to come down one at a time.
Yeah.
And so as one person comes down, they unhook from the rope and hook onto us, and then we have to wiggle our way down to make room for the next person coming down. Until all 6
We've
of
all
us-
got ugly faces right now.
Yeah.
Oh, man. And then after 6 of us are on the ledge, then we've got to wiggle our way around till we get to a better area. Then we hook up and rappel down from there.
Nice.
But that was pretty scary.
Yeah.
I mean, because it's real.
Yeah.
I mean, it's not an amusement ride at Six Flags. It's the real deal.
Yeah, I've been wanting to. I've got ropes and harnesses and carabiners and everything. Just never gotten around to going. I would love to climb. I'm not really built like a climber anymore, but I would love to do that. So did y'all go through an outfitter?
We did.
Yeah.
Exum Outfitters in Grand Tetons. They're worldwide. They do all kinds of different places, but they're very good. As a matter of fact, a year later to the day, on July 13th the following year, there were 4 guys stranded on top of the Grand Teton in a lightning storm. One of them, the lightning knocked off and killed him. A second one got hit by lightning, and it burned. He was wearing a metal watch, and it burned his arm where the metal watch went around.
Oh, my God.
But they actually did get those 3 guys off, but it was not Exum Outfitters that was up there with them.
Wow.
Because we signed a waiver every
course.
day
Yeah.
when we went through training, and then the 2-day climb up, that says, at any point, if they deem it, unsafe, you're going down.
That's people you want to go with. Though.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly. So, I mean, as a matter of the day that we summited, a huge storm at 4 o'clock in the morning. We were supposed to get up. We're on the saddle of the mountain, and in a big tent. And the storm blows in, and they woke us up because at 4 we were supposed to start summiting, because the rule is be off the top of the mountain by noon, because that's when the storms blow in. So at 4, they wake us up and said, we're not going. Y'all go back to sleep, and we'll see. And I turned to my buddies, and I said, we ain't going, guys.
Yeah.
I mean, this storm.
Y'all
we're
just
not
sit
gonna
around
go.
and keep growing beards.
Yeah, exactly.
Hang out in your colorful tent.
Drinking hot chocolate.
But 2 hours later, they got us up, and they said, we've got to go right now. And so we started out at 6. We were off the top. I mean, the storm blew in a little bit before noon, but we were off the top. But we didn't have any lightning or any issues. But, y'all, it was a beautiful, clear day until
In July.
even when
Like
we were on
that.
top, until that storm blew in. And you could see the clouds coming, but you didn't realize, or we didn't realize, because we were just novices, but those guides knew. Because when we got on top, there is no such thing as a picture of me on top of the Grand Teton. And here's why. When we got to the top, I was exhausted. I was sick. 3 days of climbing school, and this is two more days on that mountain. I was sick of the mountain. I was like, I'm done. So one of the guides says, y'all go take pictures. We got 15 minutes of storm going, and we got to get off of here. So my buddies take off. I turned to him. I said, "Do you need any help setting ropes?" He said, "Yeah, but go take a picture." I said, "I don't care about no picture. I made it. That's all I care
I'm ready
about."
to go home.
I said, "Let's get off this mountain." So I helped him set ropes, and so there's not a picture of me on top of the mountain.
Oh, man.
But
Well, you're going to have to do it again now.
I was there. My buddies will vouch for me.
Cool. Yeah.
You want one of these guys to Photoshop you in? Because
Yeah, we
they do that to me all the time when I miss group photos.
We're about to Photoshop all of us in on the backdrop
That's it.
with a picture of you.
Yeah.
Really?
Yeah, we'll take a picture here, then we'll
Yeah, we
just
have to get a
Photoshop it for-
picture. We've
back
gotten
at
a
the-
picture with every one of our guests so far. So.
Speaking of, we're about an hour and a half in, so let's.
Wow.
Yeah, we
wrap
sure
this up.
appreciate your time, Coach. We've been looking
guys,
forward to this for months.
There's
Well, I
there's one
appreciate
last
it.
section we do on this show, and it's called 5 questions.
Oh, Lordy.
I've got 5 questions for you, my friend. I'd like nothing but to know the truth to them. Oh man, who came up with that?
That's good. That's a good
Wild.
one.
All right, 5 questions. What do you got there, James?
What's a movie you can quote start to finish?
Start to finish.
You want your daughter to answer first?
Sure. What do you think?
She laughed when we asked. Gladiator.
Oh, Braveheart. I could do Braveheart.
That's a good one. That's a good one.
I would have to go with my second pick would be Die Hard.
No, yeah.
Cool.
Greatest Christmas movie ever.
Amen. We saw it the other night.
There you go.
I've been on a lot.
I'm over that whole debate. I'm over it. All right, give us your best childhood memory.
Best childhood memory. Boy, that's a tough one. I would have to say learning to ride, the day I learned to ride a bike. Because I'll never
You were
forget
free
that.
then.
I was. And the bike was free as far as I was concerned.
When it clicked. You remembered it clicked.
Yes.
You're like, I
Yeah.
can do this.
Yes.
I remember reading when it just clicked. I read a book and I was like, oh, I get it.
He was 26.
Yeah.
Yeah.
3rd grade, man. Go dog go. It was great.
Hey, that's my favorite childhood book.
That was the book I learned to read
She
on.
knows it too. Every one of my grandkids have
The
that
big
book.
tree, small tree. That was the page actually. That I learned to read on.
My favorite part of that book is the when they're all sleeping and the dog is getting a moontan.
Yeah.
And I would always point that out to my kids when I read it to them.
Yeah.
Um,
I looked at the pictures until like page 10 and I was like, oh, I can read. And I read the rest of it. So I don't know what the beginning of it's like.
if you could be the lead singer of a band, which band?
There we go.
Oh, Tom Petty and the Heartbreakers.
There we
All right. There's an opening.
Yeah.
There is.
Too soon.
There is.
Too soon, Matthew, you big
Sorry.
jerk.
I do like Tom Petty, though.
All right, this is number 4, right? What would your last meal be?
Mexican food, and if it has to be from a certain place, it would be Chewy's.
I like Chewy's.
What's your
good.
plate? Or Mexican selection.
Last night we ate at Chewy's, and I had the steak burrito. I
There you
love
go.
the steak burrito.
I like the fajitas there.
Fajitas are good.
She's nodding her head. She likes the fajitas
I'm a
too.
fajita
She had that last
connoisseur.
night.
I like the lady in the booth making the tortillas and stuff.
Oh yeah.
All right. Here's a good
Don't
one.
they have salsa in like a car trunk or something like that?
Yes, they do.
Yeah.
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 Last question. If you could find out the absolute truth to one thing in this universe, what would it be? We always usually go with aliens, and it's okay if you do too. but-
Yeah, that would have to be. I was alive when
Right.
that happened. I would really like to know what happened with the Kennedy assassination.
Do you remember where you
man,
were
Kennedy's
that
a
day?
good one.
Oh, I was in
That's a good
school.
one.
I was in
School.
school.
Okay.
I
That's a
definitely
good,
remember
solid
it.
answer.
Yeah, 9/11's our Kennedy thing. I remember I was down here 9/11. So yeah, I mean Kennedy's a good solid.
That's a good answer.
Yeah. So
Aliens is a good answer, I think.
yeah.
Bigfoot.
Bigfoot, absolutely. North American wood
The
ape.
secret ingredient to that Kraft spaghetti seasoning. It comes in. I want to know what's in that.
Yeah.
That was mine.
Well, I think that about does it.
Yeah, we sure appreciate your time.
Yeah. Thanks, Coach.
Guys, I love
Former
it.
athletic director, head coach of Leonard High School, Pflugerville principal assistant coach there. Many different titles along the way. Coach Wrinkle, thank you very much, sir.
Thank you, guys.
Thanks.